Welcome to Real Leadership, the podcast that spotlights leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. Together we go to the heart of leadership to discover the strategies and hard-earned lessons from pragmatic, gutsy leaders who operate in a world that is more steak than it is sizzle. I'm your host, Jim Weaver, Chief Executive Officer of the Ōnin Group, where we believe that real leadership matters. Let's go. Understanding your labor market is crucial for successful recruitment. Ōnin Staffing's Recruitment Strategy Guide provides insights specific to your geographic location and the positions you're hiring for. Our Recruitment Strategy Guide delivers a clear snapshot of your labor market and actionable intel to tackle market-specific challenges. With Ōnin's expertise, we help you navigate and win in your competitive landscape. Empower your recruiting process with the insights you need. Learn more about Ōnin's Recruitment Strategy Guide at ōninstaffing.com/strategy. This is going to be a good one. Today I'm with David Reid. He is both the Chief Technology Officer and the Chief Marketing Officer at NOV, otherwise known as National Oil Well Varco, a leading global provider of equipment and components for oil and gas drilling, production operations, and oil field services. Originating from Scotland and having worked across California, now based in Texas, David began his professional journey in architecture before transitioning to engineering. Although his move to engineering was a bit unexpected, he quickly distinguished himself as a pioneering designer of drilling rigs. His extensive experience spans multiple sectors, including product repair, services, operations, design, marketing, and technological innovations. David also regularly serves many organizations and societies as a public speaker, and he's the founding member of the SPE Drilling Systems Technical Section and the IADC Advanced Rig Technologies Committee. He's also the founder and president of redM, a nonprofit fighting against modern slavery. That is quite a resume. Welcome, David.
Yeah, thanks. It's a lot.
Yeah.
My mom would be proud.
Good. I'm sure she would.
She's the only one who cares about that stuff. That's great.
Well, we got to put it out there just to pique people's interest, you know?
Sure.
Tell us about NOV. A lot of people, that's a big company that a lot of people I don't think have necessarily heard of.
No.
So what do you guys do?
We don't try to be known particularly, which is strange, but we're a manufacturer really at heart. We buy company a month. We're very, very acquisitive, and we also innovate a lot. We're very good at putting groups of people together, growing their business. We kind of founded in oil and gas. In fact, when you said National Oil Well Varco, we haven't been called that in a decade, but it's okay. It doesn't insult us. It's just we changed our name to NOV because we started moving into renewables and all sorts of other parts of business. So we're in a lot of places, but definitely started around drilling rigs, and that was our foundation. So yeah, that's us. We're all over the world, probably over 60 countries. We manufacture all over the world. We sell, we service. Big company, lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that name sticks in my head. I guess maybe that's when I heard of you the first time. It was more than 10 years ago. But,
yeah.
So you have an apparent kind of hybrid role, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Chief Technology Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. How do those two roles connect?
They don't.
In your organization?
I'm just a weird guy.
They don't?
I tell them CTO, CMO. C must be for cheap because it's a 2-for-1 special, so that's good. No, I was doing technology stuff all my career, and I ended up taking on marketing. And so I was CMO first, and then it's really not. Some people think CTO is kind of IT, which it's nothing to do with that.
Okay.
And we have way too much technology and too many things that we're in for me to actually worry about, the buying and using of people's technology. I have to design and invent and find new technologies. So the two fit when you think of it in those terms. because it's very much what technology do we need. I've always been the kind of future caster of the business, always thinking about where we should be, where we need to be in the 5 to 10 year mark. So it just is who I am. The marketing part I always liked, and the technology part was really just a part of me. So more the strategy of where we're going and why we're going there.
So yeah, the technology part, the marketing comes along to promote the vision of where we're heading.
And if it's synced right, you can kind of do the hinting as you go along without fully revealing, where you're going, but doing enough and knowing exactly how you want to position yourself. What words do you want to use? About a decade ago, we came in with this, we power the industry that powers the world. And then a few years later, I had a renewables kind of group get together to talk about what we're doing, where we can go, and what opportunities there are. And someone was like, hey, shouldn't we say we power the industries that power the world? And I'm like, no, actually, we designed it this way. Because the industry we're talking about is energy, and that's what we're moving into. And they were like, oh, well, don't you think? Because they'd always assumed we're talking oil and gas here, but it's really about innovating and facilitating the enablement of people to reach energy at lower cost and make it more viable. And so for us, the renewables people came to us saying, "Can you help?" In the end, they were like, "We need to get cost out of this. We need to do better at it. We're a bunch of startups trying to invent this stuff when we need a much more solid backbone to execution." So we moved into that space.
How have you moved into renewables? Where is your strength in renewables? Tell us about that.
We differentiate in renewables because we make money. That would be a wild differentiator.
Yeah.
We're a business. It's funny because I have a fantastic lady, PhD, super smart, and she was working on a lot of things. I'm like, "Do you think we're an energy transition company?" And she was like, "Yeah, we are." And I was like, "We're not. We're a business. And if we want to see new energies, it's going to have to be profitable. Everything else is just, hopeful." So we're in spaces where we can make a difference, basically. So we took a group maybe 7 years ago and kind of said, take anything in renewables, find the cost pain, half that cost. Invent, off you go. And so they started playing at where's the cost pain and how can we take it away? And so it was kind of open season for a few years here. We just did everything. Let's just try everything. And we just went through a kind of cleaning up of what are we in that looks promising. And so wind, we do really well in fixed wind installation systems. It's pretty much what we used for drilling. So it's jacking systems and vessels and cranes and all of those things that we need. So we have about, we have more than half of that market. But we make money. If you ask, do people make money installing wind towers offshore? Not really. But they do have to buy the stuff that we have to do that, and it's good margin business. So we find ways. Okay. That's just a simple taking what we do here and putting it there. Yeah. If you look at wind towers, when we looked at the application on land, there's an odd and slightly amusing reality that people were putting up wind towers, and their number one problem was it's windy. Well, maybe we should have thought of that, but they brought traditional cranes, and their number one cost issue is they're waiting on weather. So we just designed a special crane that can deal with higher towers in high winds. I mean, you would think that would be the thing to do, but no one was doing it. So we came up with that. We're just bringing that to market. The other thing was there's great wind. The higher up you go, there's more wind. So taller towers has been a trend, but then they were buying to get cost out everywhere. So the Chinese steel that was coming in through Long Beach couldn't get under the bridges because it was too big a structure. So we designed a system that is taking the manufacturing to the field. So you send the steel, it bends it, it welds it, and it builds a tower.
Wow.
And now you're building in the U.S., but at a lower cost than shipping low-cost steel in from China. So it's a better idea. So, it's a good example of a few things. We do a lot in a lot of spaces, and we don't do things. We were in solar, we're out of solar. it's just such a race to the
You're
bottom.
out?
Yeah, there was opportunity, and where we saw it was in the installation and large farm type applications. But so many people chasing the same thing. There's just and everyone's willing to lose money on that stuff. So it's sometimes you have companies who just they think they're making a difference to the world, and they just cost themselves out of the business. So wind had opportunity. Solar, we did have some inventions, but not a big enough deal to really fight for.
Recruiting top talent is tough. Ōnin Staffing focuses on people, offering exceptional benefits to attract and retain dedicated workers. Partner with us for flexible, data-driven solutions. Visit ōninstaffing.com to learn more.
Yeah. Zooming out, and I really agree with you, the financial incentives, it needs to work, this shift, this renewable shift, it needs to work economically without just printing money and throwing it at it, right?
I mean, we never used to talk to governments, and now we do because of this. But when we tell them we don't want your money, it's a hilarious response because everyone wants their money, and we're like, no, we're okay. We can fund ourselves, thanks. What we need is you to do the infrastructure work. So I mean, we're in floating wind, which is a really interesting model, but everyone wants to build it in their countries, and they don't even know what they're saying. These are gigantic structures.
You're in floating wind?
Yeah. So
what does that
it's
mean?
a vessel that you will moor, so you'll tie it to the seabed, but it is floating. So we're proposing to the UK government right now about 210 of those gigantic vessels. And everyone's like, we'd like to build it in country. You're like, Scotland would be all manufacturing. It's a small country.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can do it, but it's just bigger than anyone's ever imagined. We were talking with Harlan and Wolff. They were asking for information on the project. And I don't know if you've heard of the Titanic, but that was their job. So they did that.
Wow.
But they're big shipyard in the UK over in Ireland. And they were just shocked. They can't believe the scale. They're like, this is go to the board stuff. I mean, it sure is. This is make it or break it. Like, these are gigantic. And that's a 210 semi-submersible job, of which they need about 3,000 plus of those in Scotland just for their application. So California has that same thought, Northern California, but all of them are underestimating what gigantic wind towers offshore will produce in high peak. And what do you do with that energy, right? So you're getting massive spikes. Right. So everyone kind of underestimates the hard work is in the infrastructure. And so the governments are going to have to do that. So that's kind of my point is there's things we can do, but it's also not very well thought out. Mm-hmm. Economics are poorly thought out, So there's a lot of that in that space. So much hope for change, but not a good understanding of total cost.
I mean, isn't storage just a massive barrier?
It is. If you have somewhere for it to go, so our first proposal is to take oil and gas fields in the North Sea and power them, and the excess will go into hydrogen, which, immediately, if you have a market and you have a way to move it, not a crazy idea. But though storage is an issue. I mean, hydrogen gets interesting when you're near to the work you're going to do. This is actually talking about transporting it, which is a whole nother issue. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of practical conversations that don't happen. I always like when I'm telling the leadership team, they get frustrated, and I'm like, well, don't bring facts in because, people are going to do this. Do you want to do it? We can enable it. Do you want to just stop getting in the emotions of, is this a great idea for countries and nations? And
So, what do you think it's going to take to really make this energy transformation that everybody, this leap that most people want to make? What do you think is on the macro, zooming way out? What do you think the major pieces are that need to be put in place? There
is infrastructure, but the one thing that everyone overlooks is nuclear, which is a shame because it's the answer, and we have 40, 50-year-old technology that's making us think about nuclear when the new stuff is incredible. And the waste is minimal, and there's so.
Are you in nuclear?
Yeah,
do you guys
we're playing in it just now. Yeah, we're looking at can we add value. So there's a team.
Yeah.
Looking to our kind of oil and gas world because we know those people.
Yeah.
And that really helps.
The small nuclear plant model is pretty cool.
You hold one of those next to a wind farm, And you quickly go, oh no, I'll take the little box, thanks.
Right. Yeah,
it's crazy, but I mean, we've had this technology. It's moving better and faster all the time. But I think in Obama's era, he was given exactly, here's what we can do now. And it's the word. Honestly, it's the word that scares people, and it's a lack of education. And everyone thinks nuclear bombs or thinks Fukushima or, exactly, which are historically just bad designs, things we know not to do. But I think it's a big, that, and there's probably something else we haven't touched yet. Mm-hmm. But lots of people pick on really bad things, like the really bad economics. There's tons of wave energy. I shouldn't call these things out, but I'm doing it. But when you look at it, the economics just get horrendous really fast, and people get excited and convince themselves, and governments fund it, and they get lost just not really seeing proper business sense. And that's our logic, is we're like, okay, what could we do? It'll work as a business. Everyone in the game gets to make money, and we produce lower cost abundant energy. That's the big question.
Yeah. One would think that a guy like you, who's C-level guy in a large publicly traded energy company, would have been sort of bred for that role. But you had a pretty interesting path. You started out as an architect. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. In California and Scotland, it was kind of weird. My wife's Californian, so I was back and forth. I probably just chose wrong. Ultimately, it gave me a lot of tools for leadership. Strangely enough, having an architectural training, I still use architectural theory to help grow leaders, which is peculiar, but it was just really helpful. I was way too impatient for architecture's pace. I wanted to do things, and when you're younger, you don't get to do those things. You earn that position, and so most of the projects I worked on early, I was frustrated way too early. It wasn't going to work. And honestly, I didn't pick oil and gas. I grew up in a town that was oil and gas. I wasn't a fan. And someone met me and offered me a job in a repair workshop. And
repair in oil and gas?
Yeah, giant machine repair. And
we're a staffing company, so I have to bring out this point. You came in as a contingent worker, right?
Yes, basically. Doing paperwork for a supervisor.
Huh.
But the pay was great. And that was the thing about oil and gas, was the money was good. So it was actually as good as doing architecture. So I was kind of like, this is strange, a really dumb looking job. I'm like, I guess I'll try it. Yeah. But in 92, when I joined, they had Apple Mac computers, and that's all I cared about at that point. Like, I'm gonna come for a month and just play with this machine while I get paid for a month and then find a proper job.
Yeah.
And but I think I heard one of the leaders speak. They were California corporation, and I immediately was like, I get this. Like, what you're trying to do with people, like, I totally get this. Like, this is way ahead of. I mean, at the time I didn't think ahead of the times, but I just knew this is what I believed in leadership, and I was like, I love this. Like, I can thrive in this environment.
What company was that with?
It was Varco originally. So
it was okay.
Yeah,
it was.
So they were California.
So what were they doing with people at the time that was so appealing to you?
Now I know that what had happened was they came through threats of unionization, and so what they did was they tipped the scales in the way of workers. And they had a trust model like you've never seen, and they would only correct individuals. They would not correct everybody based on an individual's choice. They had language rules that were just well thought out, like things we would consider now are new. This was, 90s. My first thing I noticed was I'd been in workshops before, and I walked through and there was no girly calendars on the wall. And I'd never seen that. And I literally brought it up in the interview. I said, I noticed there's no girly calendars. And I come from a place where the office was full of naked girls in the calendars in the office. And I was like, this is crazy. I'd actually shredded them all, but that's another story. Yeah. But it bothered me that this was a norm. Yeah. And they said, well, we're not gonna do that to women. That's not right. And I was like, I'd never heard someone say that. That's what I think. So there was a lot of well thought out things. Supervisors and bosses or superiors. These words weren't good words for them. They're like, no, that's not the right language. We're all employed. We're all working here. My people didn't want to be called boss. They didn't want it. That's not okay. And you weren't allowed to have a desk that someone sat on the other side of. You had to be up against the wall. So when you went to see someone, they turned around and there was nothing between you and them, no physical thing. Amazingly, like, you're like, well, what does that matter? It mattered. It was crazy how much they mentored like crazy. Years later, I went back to my boss and said, I tell everyone how well you mentored me. And he said, why are you using that word? And I'm like, well, that's what they call it now. And they said, it was never mentoring. I was learning from you. Like, we were colleagues, and I was learning from you. You were learning from me. It was okay.
Huh.
I was never at some higher. That's how they thought. That was crazy.
Yeah. That the language thing is so powerful, especially in a big organization. You can really instill a lot of values by being really careful about the language.
I think when I got closer to the hub, I learned that they were that way. But you saw ripples of it. You saw it top, but there was never a culture poster. They did not do that. It was weird. We about 2014 we did a review of all of our businesses globally. Everyone said the exact same things about what the company values. We had never written it anywhere. Three main things that everyone said. No one called it a company. Everyone called it a family, which that's a bit concerning because it sounds like a cult.
Yeah.
But it really was that there's a family-like feeling when you go wherever you go. It's a strange thing for us. But what really happened was we had a tendency towards small company acquisition, not large company merger. And so everyone grew up in small companies. And my leadership team that I'm on, everyone grew on some shop floor somewhere, same as I did. Or out in the field and up, so...
Land top technical and professional talent with Focus. Focus specializes in direct hire and contract placements, connecting you to exceptional candidates in IT, engineering, management, and more. Elevate your team with Focus. Visit getinfocus.com.
Okay, so you take this, it's interesting. One of the words in our company that's illegal is the word temp. Yeah. If you're referring to one of our teammates as that, so I'm having a hard time like putting that word out there to you. But you were a temp because you work for another staffing company, so it's okay. How did you go from that to designing oil rigs?
I got fired. That was probably why. I got fired in one of my architectural jobs. It was a crazy, wild idea. I'd only worked there two weeks, and they just cut me a check and said, don't come back.
Really?
I was homeless at that point with a 6-month-old and my wife from California in Scotland. It changed everything for me because we survived, which was good. It wasn't fun, but But I think if I look back at it all, it taught me that I'm going to be all right, and there's nothing to fear. And I really pushed against things that I thought were wrong. And I really started doing things that most people would say, ooh, that's a bit risky. I wouldn't say that. So when I first went on a drilling rig to measure for equipment, the equipment was wrong. I just looked and I'm no engineer, but this is wrong. Like, and I told the guy, the engineer who was with me, I'm like, they're meeting the spec, but missing the point. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, we're trying to handle this. If we handle these bigger things, it's actually where the damage is happening and the risk is. What if a system could do both and design this thing? And I kind of drew it out, and he engineered it up. And I actually went, this is in Norway. I went and asked people to bid it in Norway, which we were supposed to be building in California and shipping. And then I called my boss after a couple of rounds with a customer on pricing that we were getting down on the pricing. And I was like, oh, this is not good margin, but it's the right strategic move. So I called my boss in Scotland, and he's like, what are you doing? You were sent to measure for Californian existing equipment on there, not to design something. And I said, well, it was wrong. And he said, well, okay, weird thing, but the management team is meeting tomorrow on Monday in Stavanger, where you are. Go call this guy tonight. He's at this hotel, and go see him. So I went over, met this guy, told him my story, showed him drawings, showed him pricing. explained my thinking in the lobby of the hotel, and he's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" Well,
That's great.
I'm the guy from the shop in Montrose, and it's just wrong. And he goes, "Well, come tomorrow, show this to the leadership team." Now, the guy from our side in the UK was like 4 or 5 levels above me. Yeah, I turn up, he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "They told me to come. I don't know why I'm here." So anyway, I presented it, and the president at the time said, "Can you get in the car with me after?" And he said, "Well, how are you liking? I hear you're in Scotland, but your wife's from Southern California. How's she like being in Scotland?" I went, "Oh, she hates it." And he was like, "She hates
Especially
it."
because you're homeless. I mean, that doesn't help things either, right?
We'd come past the homelessness, but
Okay.
but she hates it. And he said, "Well, would you move to California?" I'm like, yeah, we would. And that's the last of the conversation. And so he went on to Holland, talked to the guy at the job there, and said, "David Reid, what if he ran this project?" And he was like, "Yeah, he would." He called his wife. He was our next door neighbor. She shouts over the wall to my wife. My wife calls me, "Are we going to California?" No, not that I know of. Anyway, within a week, they moved us, and I lived in California, started doing pipe handling, and they just saw something in me.
Yeah.
That they were really, really, really good at seeing things in people. And for a Scottish person, my chances of success were very low in life based on family and education and everything else. And they just spent time with me.
Yeah.
What we would call mentoring, active mentoring, but they spent a lot of time, believed in me, and they would ask me, they'd have me sit with the CEO and the presidents and go, "Okay, what's next?" And I'd tell them, "This is what I think is next." And they'd listen, and I'd be like, "This is weird," But
Wow.
I was really bad at a lot of obvious things, that everyone was good at. And
Like what?
Numbers, writing, the usual normal things everyone can do well. And they told me, like my first feedback session, they're like, "Well, you're really quite bad at writing. You're quite slow, and it's not really well done.
Yeah.
And your numbers work isn't that good." And I was like, "Oh, here we go, getting sent back to Scotland, back to the pain."
Yeah.
And he goes, "But your view of where we should go is amazing. Your understanding of markets and technology, and we have 2 people who can do that in the whole company. The other stuff everyone can do. We can all write and we can all do the numbers. But knowing where to go, there's our CEO and one of the presidents, and that's it."
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do with that. That was not anything I could understand at the time. But they just kept saying, "Okay, well," they just coached me. In fact, the old CEO and my boss, the old CEO called me 2 weeks before he died. They all called me regularly after retirement. And then my old boss called me just as he was starting to get Alzheimer's bad, Like they were connected, like human beings, like good people. So yeah, that's just them. They were that way. And so everyone they produced was that way. Everyone they spent time with, you naturally thought that was life, and you just treat people well, think people first. The company only exists because of the people. You grow the business because of a moral responsibility for the families of the people who work there. Mm-hmm. Very, very different.
Yeah. Tell us about your team, how it's organized, how you guys do what you do.
Okay, I have 2 obviously because I have 2 titles, but marketing I developed over years, so that was really good. So when they offered technology, I'm like, I can do both. That's great, thanks. Most of it is focusing on people. I'm obsessive about people and where they function well, believing that everyone functions well somewhere. Sometimes not on your team or your company, which is fine. But when you have them under your care, your responsibility is to help them find that. So I'm very growth orientated, that I believe everyone has to find a place to grow. Might not be here, might be me having to grow so that you can grow, but everybody. So I sit in my direct reports, reviews with their direct reports, mostly as a training exercise so that everyone learns how to help people find their way without manipulating them or controlling them, but just listening and asking questions to help them conclude, what the right thing is to do, even if it's the wrong thing. But to cause people to carry on through growth. I mean, I have a ton of millennials who've worked for me. still work for me. And that's one of the weird things most people look at. They're like, millennials don't do that. They don't stay with a team for a decade. That doesn't happen. But it has happened, and so that's
What do you think the key has been to you having that longevity with that age group in particular?
I didn't know the answer to that, but a friend from Silicon Valley came by and he wanted to meet them, and so he asked them. So I heard them say it, and they said, "What happens here is I've found out who I am, and that matters." And like, I'll switch jobs. If we hire someone with a title for a job, I'm like, I will change that title all day long until it's the right one. And I'll work with we don't have someone to do this job. I just have and I think it comes from the guys I started with, but this just belief that it's going to be all right and all the answers are here and all the right people are here. And we bring people on carefully. And they will last. They will flourish in this environment. And so it's not like our guy. I have maybe he's a movie director, producer, but he was an engineer working on a technical application, and he showed me a short film he did years ago, 15 years ago now. And I'm like, this is you. Like, this is what you're meant to do. And so he came to work for me and has ever since, and makes like ridiculously high value films, writes the music, does everything. I've taken him to meet friends and Disney and different places. Wow. And they're like, this guy is unreal. Like, and everyone's like, don't take him over there. They'll steal him. Like, they can't steal him because he's happy, and they produce unhappy people. And I'm more concerned about his family life than I am his productivity, because he takes care of that. Yeah. So, and no other company is that way. They cannot compete. When we get people onto our teams, if they do leave, they will be sorry, most of them, because it's our unique environment, but they don't know that. Usually if someone's been in a bad environment, they come in, they're like, I'm never leaving, because we're so pro them.
Struggling with high turnover and burnout? Ōnin Flex addresses these challenges head-on, offering a scalable solution with vetted part-time talent to fill staffing gaps. Ōnin Flex combats worker shortages and ensures your core team isn't overburdened, reducing turnover and enhancing job satisfaction. Empower your workforce and boost your success with Ōnin Flex. Visit ōninflex.com to learn more.
I heard another interview that you did where you made the comment about growing your people, and then you stopped yourself and you said, you don't grow your people. I mean, you create an environment where they can grow. That was an interesting distinction. It really resonated with me. Yeah. Expand on, why did you stop yourself there? Why is that little nuance important to you?
Well, and I was trained to grow people. There was a saying that I was taught really young, which is, you don't use people to get the job done. You use the job to get the people done. But it took me years to work out that was wrong. You don't do anything. You do not make people do anything. You can only create an environment for growth. If you try to use people in either scenario, you're still using people. You're the core of the focus, and that's wrong. People come with talent, and your job is to help make an environment where they can grow. It is really important. Control, I mean, you learn it with cults and other things. That's one of my just interests, where you're like the manipulation of people. And I think we'll probably talk about this, but I work in the anti-human trafficking world, but I've been around survivors for years, and what you learn is the control and manipulation of people is so wrong. Like, it is slavery, and even in a work environment, it's slavery, where you're trying to coerce and manipulate people to do what you want. It's not freedom. We have to live in a free environment where people find and discover and grow and own and have healthy boundaries and healthy thinking. And so if you create that environment, life will happen. But otherwise, you're limited to yourself, which really, really sucks.
Mm-hmm. That's the only way that beautiful flower is going to blossom.
Right. We don't make flowers grow. We just care for them. We water them, and we put them in a good place, and hopefully they're in good soil. And soil is the kind of their private life, So that's up to them, not our choice, but we can encourage them to do good things in their private life. And then when things go wrong, I love this aspect, but human beings will revert to whatever trauma happened in their life. And so when they're angry or sad or whatever they are, you can't control it, but you can name it, like not to them, but you can say to yourself, wow, 12 years old. I do this in my leadership. I'll say, when this person acts up, how old do you think they are? 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something happened. None of our business, never crossed that line. I couldn't be more strong on a subject of it is none of our business what people have personally gone through. Because people do that in work and think that's appropriate. It's not. But for the sake of people observing, it's just so that we know whatever that issue is in their life, they can choose to deal with it or not, and we have to kind of adapt to whether they do or don't. We can give them information so they can try and deal with whatever that is. But we can't be their therapist. We can't. But we can help people. We can understand people better. We can know that bad things come out of all of us under pressure, and that we have to. We all have to do our own work. And the best thing is do your own work and tell people about it.
Yeah. Another guest I had, guy Bill Kennedy. He just released a book, the 80/20 CEO. He talked about in the book, he talks about divergent versus convergent thinking, or divergent thinkers versus convergent thinkers. And the divergent thinkers are the outside of the box, innovative folks, and the convergent ones are the executor. They want to distill it down and execute, right?
Yep.
And you got to have both.
And you got to learn how to bridge both. It's not easy. Those two don't like to live together.
Accomplishing diversity, equality, and inclusion directives can be challenging. Excelsior Staffing, a certified MBE providing staffing solutions for light industrial sectors, has been helping companies like yours find success since 2007. Strengthen your diverse team with Excelsior. ExcelsiorStaffing.com.
Yes. So how do you do that? You are an incredibly innovative guy. You got this, I say this tongue in cheek, but you got kind of an earthy, crunchy view of people. It's lovely. I'm in your camp, right? But the convergent folks would be like, oh, it doesn't work. We got to, So how do you connect this innovative, kind of open, free, culture that you have to execution and delivery and connect to the convergent folks?
Totally. And both extremes have their dangers,
Sure.
So the one side are the control maniacs who do damage. My side is the cult side. Like when you're an inspiring, kind of creative, you can do nothing and everyone feels great, and you're crashing people's lives inadvertently, or they're just following you, which sucks for them, because they don't have any identity. So I think understanding the weaknesses, but I mean, for me, the first was learning that I need the structural people so badly. Like I have to surround myself with them, and I drive them crazy. Yeah. So learning to not put the two in places they don't have to be. So if I'm going to do a brainstorming about anything, let's do a future thinking. Do not have the other people in the room. It's going to drive them nuts. They still laugh at the stories of when they think it's funny that the no bad ideas thinking. They still laugh about it. There's a great film, I don't know that we put out. It's on, we have a thing called Digital Crumbs on Vimeo, and it's like things, not Vimeo, there you go. And Vimeo's a whole different thing, but feel free to send me money.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but thanks. But this idea, it was my 30th anniversary, and they did a film, and there's just a lot of this challenge in the mix, and the lady who plays herself well is this, and they're all basically, I send a text to the group to someone who's more structural, and it's my usual this is a chat in my mind to them. You're my boss, right? So I do this. Hey, wonder what this would be like. And then it turns into this massive project, and when they send it to me, I'm like, or not, basically, which is true. And in the case of this real story, it was not. But that tension is really important to understand and to not play to me. Like it's not, the temptation is make it the world I want, which means I get the best creatives, which I did at first. I created this great creative space where the structural people felt like they need to pretend they're creative now to survive and be loved, Wrong answer. I had to learn First, to surround myself with the structural people and to adapt myself so that I could actually be fruitful and know when our meetings started going to 2 hours. And I'd be like, man, I got to have this conversation. Like, why are we doing 2-hour meetings? And they said, well, because you always make them last long. And so it takes us 2 hours to execute. And I was like, don't invite me. I hate meetings. Have me in at the end. Sum it up. Don't have me. I'm doing this because I really, really dislike meetings. So, and it's the same as in the brainstorm. Have me there and give us lots of time. Yeah. Just keeping people out of the spaces and then recognizing. And I mean, I think, I don't know, love languages has been so fruitful for me just as a basic idea with people and knowing what it takes for them to feel loved and accepted, or appreciation languages is the business version of the same thing, which basically says don't touch anyone and the rest of the love languages are okay. But
right.
But, if touch is your thing, be careful. But it's really been helpful mostly because I spent a lot of time thinking about how do I work? How do others work? How do I help them, understand how I feel? And then making sure people get what they need. And making people, everyone's valuable. And I think it's keeping in that world of everyone's valuable and not enforcing your style on people, but learning how to get the most out of it.
Where do you go for inspiration? How do you keep it fresh? You're an innovator. Does that just flow for you? You don't have to work at it, or do you find you have to create space for it? How does that work with you?
I think my unwell self would say yes, it just flows. But it's not true. I mean, it's not lived experience, because the people around me will tell you over time, if I don't care for me, then if I don't take space, I'm not that pleasant, It's been a lot of tuning over years, but so yeah, I've had really good friends who watch me and like to bother me instead of just tell me I'm okay, which is really helpful. So they're the ones who've really, as soon as I kind of got into C-suite, they're like, oh, okay, so what happens when you're gone? I said, what do you mean when I'm gone? When you're not doing this job, what are you going to be? Well, I'll get another job. And they were like, yeah, but this, you're in a short window job title now. You're going to be 3-4 years, you're out of this. But I want to know, what do you do for 1 or 2 months with the money you're going to be given, because you're in a job that gives you space. I'll just get another job. No, it's the wrong answer. So they pressed me for who I am without the job. And that was really, really helpful. I started painting, photography, doing more things that are different, with my time, balancing myself out. And I think that's what helps is the constantly, I'm a workaholic by nature, so there's whatever reason that is. And so the positive of that is I can be hyper efficient. And so I choose lots of hyper efficiency, do a lot with my time. But it's a 2-gear system. I'm either fast or slow. So when I go into slow, I have to force slow. I literally asked one of these guys, like, help me, you go on vacation all the time. How? I don't understand. And he was like, thought I was joking. I'm like, no, seriously, how? And he goes, well, at the beginning of the year, you plan a window and you protect the window. And I'm like, but what if work gets in the way? Then you protect the window. Can't imagine that world. Well, then you protect the window. Like, you are, whatever happens. So I realized I've made myself so central based on a fear that it implies that I have no job to do if I'm going to take time off. So I had to work through all of that, all of my issues that came free, So, I mean, having good friends who really annoy you are really, really a good thing.
Yeah.
Because they ask annoying questions.
Finding experienced, vetted aerospace contract workers ready to work with highly specialized skill sets isn't easy. Ōnin Aerospace can help with a wide pool of the best talent, attracted through our superior benefits. To learn more, visit ōninaerospace.com.
What are some habits, some rituals you've developed over time that you think really help you to show up the way you need to show up? That's one, carving out time. That's great for space.
I think always having something that I'm doing that I haven't done before, like a discovery process, which sometimes it's a painting style. It's I played double bass for a while. It's not that I'm great at these things, but I think always having something, understanding myself, because I need to be, I'm more of a introvert / socially anxious person. So of course everyone around me thinks that's not true, which is great because that means I'm operating well.
Sure.
But it's a real thing, so I need to know. And for a long time it changes all the time, but it was go home, be alone for a bit. Like that has to happen. Like get yourself isolated. Not so much anymore, but you change, right? So it's finding different things that cause me to feel alive. And because I've got into this space where, two C-suite jobs and a nonprofit, there's not a lot of space for the other stuff. So I'm trying to work out, okay, I've got to find the space for the other stuff. So it's finding the right way to be healthy, in all things. So
let's talk about your nonprofit. So redM is a nonprofit fighting against modern slavery. So how do you find yourself in that fight? How'd you wind up there?
I didn't. I knew nothing about it. My wife did. I selfishly wanted to go back to at least number 2 in the family. I was probably number 7 or 6. I don't know. If you get pets, you're really quite low on the rankings. And my kids were teens to late teens, and I'm like, in my British thinking, everyone exits at 17, 18. And I could see that was not the local norm. So I honestly asked my wife, why don't you think about who we're going to be when the kids are gone? Which really was me saying, I want you to think about the kids being gone. So she went off, she went to a conference, came back, and she said, I think we're going to fight human trafficking. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what you're saying. So we actually went to other countries because we didn't think it was here. And then when we came back, it couldn't work for us to be involved because it was in Greece, the organization we were talking to. Came home and turned out Houston has a lot of problems, and turned out all of the US has lots of problems. And so we started working. My wife worked originally in undercover work, and then she did case work. Then I found out how dangerous it was, and so I was traveling the world, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable. She went to help an organization starting a recovery house here for survivors, and after 5 years, they insisted that I take her spot, and I went, okay. Day 1 on a nonprofit board, that drove me nuts. So I was like, okay, they're way too short of money in their head, to do the right thing. So I reached out to LinkedIn, and 57,000 views to a post. Started a group maybe 5 days later in a coffee shop, and we did a project, and then they all wanted to do more, and so 6 years later we're growing all over the States, starting to go around the world.
So what is your strategy? What does your model look like?
That would be great, wouldn't it? Someone asked me that after 3 years into redM. A really great guy called David Batstone, if you know who that is, but he did Not For Sale, starts a lot of businesses to fight trafficking. He's quite an interesting guy. But he's like, where do you see yourself in 3 years? I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't really trying to do this. It's just a thing I'm doing. But it has grown. Probably a few years. One of my annoying friends, in fact, both of them, came at me. They know end of the year is my, so that answers one of your other questions. End of the year, I do a review of everything I'm doing, and I cut things off the list and I put things on. So they knew that was my seasonal behavior. So they came in at, I think it's time for more redM. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll consider that. And it really was. And so we had this ramp up where I started to evolve companies more and more. I started, okay, I'm going to go into growth with this thing. And so the original strategy was that I noticed this generation doesn't, the new coming generation doesn't put money into things. They'd rather put time. So I did this pro bono crowdsourcing approach for volunteerism. Then I saw more companies turning up. I thought I'm going to have to manage the companies. And if I'm going to do companies, I'm going to have to be big or they're not going to want to be interested. And so I went after, let's change the whole world. Let's target completely taking out trafficking. Because, that seems impossible. So that sounded like fun. Mm-hmm. So we started going down the road, and I have a kind of things come your way belief in everything, that you don't have to actually make it happen. So I've constantly been feeling for a new avenue all the time. The guy was doing a documentary series and interviewed me, and that led to his interest in redM, my interest in his early films. I said, well, just if you feel anything, write it down and send us a script. And so he did. He literally wrote a pitch deck and sent it to us. And I was like, I don't know what to do now, because we were a no cash environment. We were he needed a lot of money. So I just played with it for a while. We did some voiceover things. We did some recording, some sketches. Kept building pitch type material, not having anyone to pitch it to. Then about November, he came and said, if we don't get anything done in the next few months, I'm going to have to cut out for a year or two doing film work. And I was like, I don't want to do that. But okay, so I gathered all the CEOs I know into a room and said, I need $1.6 million. And they were like, oh, we weren't ready for that. So no one responded. And then they gave me about 300,000. And we've gone and made two of these 60-second films that will go, in front of YouTube and Hulu and the movie theaters, all drawing people to this model. And the model allows people to do something about trafficking, not to become deep. Most people's approach to trafficking is, I'm going to tell you all the scary stuff and you're going to become the depressing person at the party from here on out. You're going to tell everyone all the bad news, all the ugly stuff, all the truth and the things that you're going to share, and people will be terrified and they won't want to be your friend. It wasn't working. So we realized what we need is the traffickers count on us being scared, us fearing them, us, not thinking it affects us, thinking it's a border problem, whatever reason you're going through in your head to not see it. So the alternative to that is to get everyone to know something. And so we do tons of events, which I'm not a fan of our events model, but we do it, to engage people. So it's usually just fun things to do, and then you learn about trafficking. I'm trying to find more efficient ways to do that, but we keep finding ways to engage people to learn the lesson. The reason redM doesn't say anything about trafficking, none of our imagery looks like trafficking, is because people don't want to know. They swipe by it, all of them. So only because everything is designed in that space to create activists. We're not creating activists. We're just letting some people get it up on their list so that when the politicians ask, the majority of the world is saying, we don't want this. And if you imagine our first event, we had 50 people turn up. And I asked them who knows about trafficking, and only 2 hands went up. And one of them said, I'm an FBI wiretapper. And I was like, oh, really? Why are you here? Well, we find guns and drugs and gangs, and that's interesting. But when we find trafficking, I'm told to leave it alone because people don't care about that. It took me years to go back and go, that's the whole thing. Politicians aren't bad people. They just want to be elected. And if we don't care, traffickers are doing the best job they can for us not to care, not to see it. So now we often will teach a class or something, and usually someone will say, hey, this sounds like my daughter when we explain grooming. And all of those cases, the boyfriend has been a trafficker, and we've been able to identify that and turn it around. But it's made to just look like troubled kids with the wrong relationships, looking like a runaway. And so we're stopping.
So the 1.6 million that you are raising is what's the end product that you're looking for from that?
You'd be surprised, but it's 6 60-second pieces. And a 7th one that will be 8 minutes. And what it will do is we'll probably hit our goal is about 20 million people.
Yeah. That
will allow cities to start redMs in their city to do their own thing. We're already doing Austin. We've got Boston next. We've got a few other cities going. But we're all about low barriers to get people started and doing this stuff and organizing and communicating. And so the design is to get that rolling. We expect after that to go to probably Super Bowl next, and then World Cup, and then maybe a Live Aid type event. But that's kind of the how do you reach the world strategy.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. Very cool. We'll put information about that in the show notes. All right. Let me hit you with a parting question, and then we'll maybe save the rest for a second follow up. Looking back at your career, you've done some really interesting things and have had a lot of unexpected turns. What advice would you give a young person that is getting out of maybe wrapping up college right now, and wanting to have a career, but maybe they think they have it figured out, or they don't think they have it figured out? What advice would you give a 20-something wrapping up school?
Don't think too hard, because movement is everything, and control is imagined. We don't make things happen. We steer things, but we don't sit there and, once I've got it figured out, I'll choose the first step, it'll lead to the next step. And all of those books, I don't believe any of them. I think most people stumble through. Hundreds of people are involved in the chemical mix of why it works. It's not just them, even though they say it's just them. It's not true. There's so many variables in this world that you're not in control. The main thing is move, make sure you can eat and have shelter. And you'll be amazed if you learn to listen and read the moments. Like, things come your way. I know it's a bit weird, but I've learned this over time that we're not in control. I had things I wanted to do. Pursue things, but don't get lost in I'm in control and I'm making it happen. And there's plenty of people telling those stories. But movement is really important, and working. And I mean, if I ended up in this company just because I wanted to eat, just because I needed shelter. But I had this opportunity, and opportunities are always there. Our mindset is negative naturally. Like, we all look to, for protection of ourselves. We just look at things negatively. So knowing what's wrong isn't a gift. Shouldn't share it with the world because they already know. But knowing what's right, that's work. That's what it's going to take, is learning to create things. So in terms of a building, you could be given the tools, you could take down a building, like give explosives, like you could do it. You could get a building to the ground. Given a stack of materials to build that building, you'd have no chance.
Right.
It's much harder to create than it is to take down. So no prizes for knowing what's wrong. I think just build, always try and look for what can I add. And
great.
Good things will come.
Yeah. All right. That's some good advice right there. So where can people connect with you, connect with NOV, connect with your nonprofit?
Yeah.
What are the best spots for that? We'll put them in the show notes. But
me, LinkedIn, just David Reid at NOV. With NOV, NOV.com, everything's on there. With the nonprofit, joinredm.com.
Okay. Well, very good. Hey, I've enjoyed it. Lots of good wisdom there, David. We appreciate your time.
Enjoyed it too.
Until next time, folks, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast was powered by Ōnin, a family of staffing companies providing real staffing solutions to manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies across the United States of America. To get in touch or learn more about partnering with an Ōnin Group company, visit us at www.oningroup.com. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.